Hola, clase. Hoy hablaremos sobre el futuro. Es muy importante que podamos hablar sobre acciones y eventos que haremos en algún momento en el futuro. Ya sabemos una manera para expresar futuras acciones usando ir más a más el infinitivo. Por ejemplo, vamos a acampar en el bosque. We are going to camp in the forest. Van a explorar el valle. They are going to explore the valley. And voy a hacer senderismo en la selva. I am going to hike in the jungle. And you can see that it's really easy to form the future in this way. All we have to do is take the verb ir and conjugate it to match our subject. So vamos for we, van for they, voy for I. We add our a to each of those, and then we just add the infinitive form of the verb that we want to say that someone's going to do in the future. Just like in English, we can express the future in Spanish in different ways. So, like in the last slide, I showed you that we can say we are going to camp in the forest and just use a few more words to express that. Or we can be a little bit more direct, like on this slide, and say things like we will camp in the forest, they will explore the valley, or I will hike in the jungle. And when we use this formation of I will do something, it's a little bit more of a promise. It's a little bit more formal and a little bit more direct instead of just saying, I am going to hike. Now, what's really interesting in English is we have another way to express the future by using our contraction "I'll." And so we kind of use that when we should have already done something, but we didn't. And so we're kind of just blowing it off and saying, well, I'll do that later. So, if we're watching a movie, instead of doing our homework, I'll do it later, or I'll get that done tomorrow, or I'll do it Monday. So it's kind of interesting how we use language to express different things like that. But Spanish actually has three different ways to express the future. English, we probably have three or four. So we've already learned the first way to express the future in Spanish, which is really just using the present tense, using the verb ir to say I am going to do something. So in the rest of this video, we're going to be looking at how to express the future with the actual future tense in Spanish. So you're going to see what the future tense endings are. You're going to see what some of the irregular verbs are like in the future tense. And this will allow you to actually be able to say, I will do something in a little bit more direct in Spanish instead of just saying, I'm going to do something. All right, so forming the future tense could never be easier. I would compare it to the imperfect tense. It is a really, really simple tense. So AR, ER, and IR verbs, they all take the same endings. So you only need to learn 5 terminaciones, and then you're good to go. And then the other really nice thing is that the endings just get added to the end of the infinitive. So you take your verb, you don't do anything to it. You don't even have to take off the ending, like the AR, ER, or IR. All you have to do is just add the ending after that. So I'll show you what that looks like, but it's really easy. Other great news, there are no stem changers. That's always good after we survived the preterite and the present tense with all those crazy stem changers. It's nice to know that there are none in the future tense. There is only a short list of irregulars. So we'll actually look at all of those this year. Last year, we only looked at 5 of them, I think. And this year, we're going to look at 10 of them. Okay, aquí tenemos las terminaciones del futuro. And as you can see, they're really easy. So we've got as, hemos, an. And what's really crazy is since we just learned the present perfect tense, if you go and look at these with an H in front of them, you'll see that they are exactly identical to the present perfect tense, besides just that H. And then if you took the accent mark off all of the vowels, it would be the same, and the H isn't pronounced anyway, so it actually sounds the same. As, a, hemos, on. That is actually because in the past in Spanish, like, hundreds of years ago, when people talked about things in the future, they actually used the verb haber to talk about that. And so they used eas, a, hemos, on. And so eventually they just kind of did a contraction and pushed everything together, which you'll see in the next slide. The really nice thing about all of these endings is these are the same endings that you'll use for AR, ER, and IR verbs. So the endings never change. And these are also the same endings that you will use for your irregular verbs in the future tense. So the endings never change. So when you actually take a verb and you add the endings onto it, this is what that looks like. And like I said before, you're just taking the infinitive, so like hablar, and you're just adding the ending onto the end. You do not get rid of that AR ending before adding your ending like we do with almost all of our other tenses. So like I said, that does make it really easy. And then as you can see, you are using the same endings, that A, all the way across. So they're all the same for AR, ER, and IR verbs. So hablar, you have hablaré, hablarás, hablará, hablaremos, hablaréis, hablarán, comeré, comerás, comerá, comeremos, comeréis, comerán, viviré, vivirás, vivirá, viviremos, viviréis y vivirán. Aquí tenemos algunos ejemplos. Primero, ellos comerán en el bosque, so they will eat in the forest. Yo estaré en Florida mañana. I will be in Florida tomorrow. Usted pescará en el lago la próxima semana. You will fish in the lake next week. Tú correrás en el parque. You will run in the park. And nosotros viviremos en Londres. So we will live in London. Okay, no podemos olvidar los verbos irregulares. So here we have 5 irregular verbs in the future tense. And we're going to learn these together because they all have just a really simple 2-step process that will help you form them. So we have poner, salir, tener, venir, and valer. They are all irregular, but the only thing that's irregular is their stem. As you can see, the endings are all regular. And so the formation for these, it's really easy. The only thing you have to do is take the last vowel in each of these verbs and change that vowel to a D. Now, I know that sounds really weird, and we don't do that anywhere else in any of our other Spanish tenses. But if you just follow this rule, if you take, like, for example, in poner, you take the E, you change it to a D. You take the I, you change it to a D. E, you change it to a D. I changes to a D, and the E and valer changes to a D. And then you end up with the stem that you need. And then the second step for all of these verbs is just to add the regular endings that you usually would. So you end up with, for poner, pondré, pondrás, pondrá, pondremos, pondréis, and pondrán. For salir, saldré, saldrás, saldrá, saldremos, saldréis, saldrán. Tener is tendré, tendrás, tendrá, tendremos, tendréis, tendrán. Venir is vendré, vendrás, vendrá, vendremos, vendréis, vendrán. And valer is valdré, valdrás, valdrá, valdremos, valdréis, y valdrán. All right, and so we're just going to look at 5 more irregular verbs in the future tense. There's actually 2 additional ones. There's 12 total, but we won't learn those, and we don't really ever use them. So the reason why we're going to learn these next 5 together is because there's somewhat of a consistent rule that you can remember with all of them. All right, but it's just a little bit strange and a little bit harder to memorize than the other 5 that we just learned. So we have decir, hacer, saber, poder, y querer. And the thing that all of these have in common is that you're going to just get rid of the E in the C or the last E. And so that's a really strange way to remember this, but you will see that for all of these, you're just always going to get rid of any C's that you see in the word. So like in decir, you're going to get rid of that C, and in hacer, you're going to get rid of that C. I'll actually just cross them out because you're actually just going to get rid of them. You're not even going to leave them in the verb. And then the last E in every one of these you're going to get rid of, which most of them only have one E anyway, but querer, there's two, so you just get rid of the last E. So get rid of the last E and the last C and all of these verbs, and you will have your stem, okay? That way you're not trying to memorize these. There's no reason to memorize every single one of these stems when you can come up with a simple rule like that to remember them by. So once you do that, you have that stem dir, der, ar, saber, podr, and quer. Sorry, that sounds really weird. But once you have that stem, then you're just going to add the regular endings onto these. So it's that simple. First step, get rid of the last E and C in all of the verbs. Second step, just add your regular endings. So for decir, you end up with dire, dirás, dirá, diremos, diréis, dirán. For hacer, it's haré, harás, hará, haremos, haréis, harán. Saber, sabré, sabrás, sabrá, sabremos, sabréis, sabrán. Poder, podré, podrás, podrá, podremos, podréis, podrán. And querer, quiere, querrás, querrá, queremos, queréis, y querrán. And that is all we will be learning. Those are the 10 irregulars, and we will talk more about this in class. Adios.